Hey folks, Mr. Holmes here. I am in the school garden right now and am visiting the aquaponics setup. And what you'll notice here is there's a 275-gallon water tote at the bottom, and it actually has some fish in it. Might be a little hard to see, but got most of our water below. And then up above here, we've got basically some grow beds, and there are various plants in here. Most of them have blown in. If I zoom in, you'll see some algae. There's also another aquatic plant. It's called parrot feather. So that's aquatic. There's actually also a willow tree that blew in here and got started. And there are some grasses. I do not know what this stuff is. And what is new is actually we got some cattails that have joined here as well. And basically the way this works is you've got most of your fish underneath here. I have some air stones that are adding a little oxygen to the water. There's a pump down here, and that is actually pumping water up into this top grow bed as well. I have the big rock here actually to weigh down the water tube, because raccoons were actually getting into this and moving the tubes around and pouring the water outside. So yeah, the water coming up from the big basin with the goldfish feeds into this top grow bed, and you'll see a lot of growth in here, the algae and the various other plants. And what happens then is it pours down into this pipe that's exiting this grow bed. And if I swing around here, this is where the pipe exits. And so we have a full cycle of water coming up from down below here, going up to the top grow beds, and cycling back down into the tank. Alright, so one thing I want you to keep in mind is that I'm adding some nutrients to the system, to the cycles, in the form of fish food. And what we'll do is take a look at the ingredients in the fish food a little bit. This is going to be some carbs, some fats, some proteins, which we'll all talk about later on. But this is part of the carbon cycle, the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and then that'll be cycled through here. The fish are going to be using it for their fins and their gills and their blood and their guts and their hormones and everything else. And then what they're not going to use, they're going to poop out, and it cycles right back up to the plants up top. The plants are going to be able to use that nitrogen for their leaves and roots and flowers and everything else, and that keeps cycling. So, taking a look at the ingredients on this fish food, I want you to keep this in mind, because when I go ahead and feed the fish in this aquaponics system, I'm adding carbohydrates and fats and protein to the system. And so anyway, back to the ingredients. Notice we've got some dead fish, so salmon and herring, and then we've got wheat flour for plants, so that's dead plants. Whole shrimp, and again we've got some dead animals, and then wheat gluten and pea protein wind up being some dead plants. Herring oil, so squish a fish and then squeeze the oil out. And then turmeric, kelp, garlic powder, and spirulina are all plants. And then we go into other things like vitamin C and such. So there's a lot that we're cheating and adding to this ecosystem. However, that's going to allow for the fish to grow and reproduce and continue those cycles as well. One more thing I'd like you to keep in mind is I mentioned that I've got the air bubbles in there. Warm water holds a lot less oxygen in it compared to cold water. And so if you have any aquariums at home, you probably have an air stone with an air pump, because that warm water is so active, it kicks out a lot of the oxygen molecules that are there. So I'm trying to keep the oxygen, especially during this heat wave, trying to keep the oxygen in there so that those fish and other organisms can stay alive. Okay, so to finish this up, it might be helpful to be able to answer what spheres are represented in the aquaponics system here at school. Also, what cycles are present and cycling in the aquaponics setup. And then finally, what elements are making their way through this aquaponics setup. And then finally, as an optional thing, and it might be kind of helpful to do, is maybe go ahead and try to draw a model of this aquaponics system and include the spheres and cycles and elements and arrows that are pointing in the directions that they flow and everything else. Yeah, and I hope you have found this helpful. Thank you.